$400 for a tune-up? You must have fallen and hit your head. Get my truck out of your shop. Let's get started. The whole idea of getting a tune-up on a car today, especially a 2011 Nissan Frontier, doesn't even exist anymore. A tune-up doesn't happen anymore. We'll get more to that here in a minute. It's a really crazy story. But this thing just came in the shop, and I've actually had a lot of people ask me, say, I know you talk about Toyotas and Toyota 4Runners and Tacomas and stuff, but what about a Nissan Frontier? I've got several emails about that. And yes, they are a really good vehicle. Are they a Toyota? No. No, it's not a Tacoma. But it's not a POS Ford Ranger from 1994 either. They're actually a very good truck. We're going to take a look at it today, look around it, and let you guys check it out. But one of the reasons it's here is for a tune-up, a serpentine belt, and an oil change. That's all it needed. But let's go ahead and take a look around this truck. It's a little dirty, it's got rained on, but it's really in pretty good shape. So on the front of this, I do think it has aftermarket headlights. I could be wrong. They look aftermarket. They may not be. I don't work on a whole lot of these, which is also a good sign. They actually are a pretty good vehicle. To me, they actually look pretty good. They got a nice kind of broad shoulders to it, nice squared off windows, squared off body. They look really nice. The body's not beat up or caved in. As I mentioned, it is a little dirty, it's dusty, but that doesn't really detract from the value of the truck. It could be washed. That is a tiny little bed, Mrs. Wizard.
Yeah, I think definitely there's nobody going to be taking a nap in there anytime soon.
Could fit a rocking chair in it.
Maybe.
This one is the SV 4x4 model. It has the 4-liter V6. We'll take a look under the hood here in a minute. But as we go down this side, it's equally as nice. It's not scratched or caved in or beat up or anything. Let's go ahead and get the hood open. And there we have the Nissan 4-liter V6, which is a very good engine. It has 261 horsepower, 280 pound-feet of torque. Gets about 19 miles per gallon in the city and 23 on the highway. This vehicle has a towing capacity of 6,500 pounds. That's basically like a 91 Chevy, Mrs. Wizard, with a 350 in it.
And those are really good for towing in their day.
This is a little 4-liter V6. It's a smaller truck, and it has just as much power and ability as a 91 Chevy or a 92 Ford F-150 or whatever have you. Really, they've come a long way with modern vehicles, modern trucks. It does very well. So speaking of tune-up, you can see on that side that 3 coils are easy to get to. But as we move to the other side of the engine, there's something in the way. Yes, you could get to 1 or 2 of them, but the third one, especially the third one and definitely the second one, you're not going to get those out. The intake plenum is in the way. It's folded over to the side. Everything looks pretty clean under here. There's a little bit of dust. It's not too bad. We checked it over. All the fluids are good. When I see stuff like this on the battery, that tells me that the customer probably cares about their vehicle and they're taking care of it as best as they can. I really like to see that. It's also a fairly new battery. One thing I'm not a fan of is the K&N filters, and it isn't because the filter is bad. As you can see, it hasn't been serviced. And it's really not the fault of the customers. People don't understand. They buy these at the parts store and they say million-mile filter. It is if it's serviced, but nobody ever does. So a lot of people call. I got a 2011 Nissan Frontier, a 2015 Toyota, a 2019 Volvo, whatever, a newer vehicle. I need to get a tune-up. What's it cost? A tune-up doesn't exist anymore. Back in the day, they would get their oscilloscope out and their timing light and all their machines, and they could adjust the distributor, set the timing, check the vacuum, make adjustments to the carburetor, make sure everything is tuned up. Today, those adjustments don't even exist. In fact, you can't even make those adjustments. Maybe you could take it to a tuning shop and tune the ECU and change stuff, but as far as sitting here like it is without a tuner, you're not going to change the air-fuel ratio. You're not going to change the engine timing. The computer does all of that, and you have no access to change any of those settings. In fact, they've got it set up for emissions They don't want you tampering with it. It monitors the oxygen sensors and all the different sensors on the engine and makes its adjustments as necessary on the fly. So that means you're not going to do a tune-up on a car today. That doesn't exist. That idea, the word tune-up, you need to delete that out of your mental vocabulary. That doesn't even exist on a newer car. Now, if your vehicle does have issues, if the computer notices things aren't right, you'll get a check engine light or other warnings on your dash that says something's wrong, and then you take it to the mechanic and get it fixed. But unless those lights come on or if everything's checking okay, like I said, there's no adjustments.
And was there, sometimes doesn't the car just even shut down many things just to scare you to get to, the mechanic to figure out what's wrong?
That can happen in many newer vehicles. You get a misfire on cylinder 1, especially on Chevrolets, the newer ones, and it will shut off your air conditioner. It'll throw up the traction control light. On a Toyota, you'll have a brake light, a traction control light, VSIS light, different lights come on. It's like, oh my God, the world's coming to an end. My engine's about to lock up. When all it was just a simple misfire or an emissions code or something. That's a way to scare you into getting the problems fixed. Because if it was just a small evap leak or something and it was just a check engine light, we would probably say, I'm not going to worry about that right now. I got other bills to pay. I'm not worried about that. But you will worry about it when it shuts off your AC and it says you don't get to have it until you fix the problem. That's why they did that, because they want you to fix it. Now they're going to force you to do it. Now the $400 tune-up, again, we're not doing a tune-up. We will replace the spark plugs and inspect the boots on the coils. We just showed you 3 coils on the side, but the other 3 are very difficult to get to. That plastic intake I just showed you has to come off. It physically has to be unbolted to get to those other coils, and then you have to buy a new set of plenum gaskets, all the spark plugs, which today modern iridium spark plugs are not $1.50. They're usually $10, $11, $14 each times 6. And this job pays in the book time 3 hours to do all 3 spark plugs on this side and all 3 on that side. Now you say, well, the book time is just running the price up. No, it's not. Because by the time Michael replaced all these plugs, pulled the plenum off, replaced those plugs, put it all back together, and road tested it and verified with the scan tool everything's good, 3 hours actually did go by. So this is not a 15-minute spark plug job like it was on your grandpa's old 85 Chevy. This is a lot different. That's why it's $400. The comment I made when we first opened up the video, I've actually heard that from a customer. Crazy D said that the guy said that I must have hit my head when I woke up in the morning, get my truck and park it outside. I'm not going to have that done. That's ridiculous. And the guy hung up on Crazy D. Now there's more to that story. The guy called 3 weeks later. I suppose I do need to get my truck and get this done. I called a few other shops and they were actually higher than what you quoted me. There must be something to this. It's like, yes, there's something to this. It's not a 85 Chevy. It's usually older customers. There's nothing against them. They're just not used to the idea that the intake has to come off to do spark plugs. You tell them that and they're like, what? I ain't never heard of such a thing. This is nothing new. Some of the early 2000s, late 90s Ford Rangers, Ford was really bad about, especially in the 80s, on their 302s, their 351s, having that big metal folded over intake. That can make injectors difficult to get to, but in this case, it makes the coils difficult to get to. This is not a new problem.
Okay, Car Wizard. So, back in the day, it seemed like you were getting your spark plugs changed like 2 and 3 times a year. How often do they need to be changed in today's world?
When it starts misfiring. And I've heard people, I tell them that, they're like, what? The service manual, blah, blah, blah. I don't care what the service manual says. I've told people, run it until it starts misfiring. Don't run it much longer after that because you could burn up a coil. But I've had people do that and they make it to almost 200,000 miles on the original set of plugs and never had a misfire. Today's plugs have platinum, iridium, they have very expensive metals on the very tips where the electrode actually is, and they're made to last at least 100,000 miles, And many times they can go 150 very easily. So spark plugs is not something you're going to do once every other year. It could be every 10 years. This customer had no problems with the price. I'm not bickering about the customer. He's actually a very nice customer. I'm very happy to deal with this customer. He said, sounds good, go ahead and do it all. And we did. But he did ask us to change the spark plug wires. There are none. Now there are little boots in between the coil and the plug itself, which all checked out to be fine. But the idea of a long wire that's alongside of the engine, those days are also gone because there's no distributor. There's no coil pack sitting far away from the engine. Everything today is direct coil on plug. So there's really not much to check. So now we're done with that. Let's take a look at the interior.
Okay, ladies and gents, you can see that it has 97,900 miles. So right at 100,000 miles, which is probably a good idea to have, those spark plugs checked out. So even with 100,000 miles on here, it is looking in good shape. Dash is in great shape, nothing cracked. Got a nice little spot to, put your phone so it doesn't go flying around. Does have a nice infotainment system. It looks like it is aftermarket, being that it is Kenwood. Kind of like a Toyota, it doesn't have too many things going on in here, which makes it easier to not be distracted while you're driving. We've done so many gray and black interiors lately that this is kind of a nice change, that we've got a kind of a taupe and kind of an ivory color as well. We do have cloth seats in here, and then we look in the back. Being that this is a truck, it does have a full back seat, so a nice bench seat that can actually seat 5 people. So if you look at the headliner, again, it's in really good shape. Got a little spot there that, we can hide sunglasses, things like that. But no fingerprints, no Mars, no marks. So as we make our way back up toward the front, you can see easy controls on how to get into 4-wheel drive. Nothing crazy there. Not many buttons. You can turn on hazards. We've got some simple controls on the steering wheel. And again, it's just really easy to use. Nothing crazy, nothing confusing like so many of the cars we have today, where there's like a gazillion buttons that keep you focused on this stuff rather than what's going out in front of the car. So this is a really nice, simple little pickup. Let's get this up in the air.
So here we are at the back end, which is hanging off precariously. There is a little bit of surface rust on this, but nothing out of the ordinary for the age of the vehicle. We'll go ahead and start right here and check our spare tire. It's got air in it, it's good to go. Our differential is nice and dry. Let me get under here, check the brakes. Brakes are very thick, 80% or more. The shocks, although they got a rust coating on them, they're still good. They're not leaking. There's our evap canister. Move to this side. The brakes look good. Shock again a little rusty, but it's still functioning. Check our U-joint here. Nothing loose.
That's a girthy shaft there, Wizard.
It is. It's light though, light and girthy. Here's our original Nissan muffler. We'll check this U-joint, and it looks good. Looks like stock exhaust all the way around. Here's our transfer case. It does have a tiny bit of seepage from a sensor, but it's really not worth doing anything right now. Here's our front shaft, and its U-joints are also good. Here's our transmission, which is dry. It's looking kind of like a Toyota under here, Mrs. Wizard.
It is.
It's very clean, very nice. Here's our front differential. Everything's nice and dry there. The boots are dry. Let's check the brakes. They're about 50 or 60%, but they're still good. The shocks aren't blown, or struts, I should say. Our steering rack is not leaking. Brakes are good over there. Here's our oil pan to the engine. You can see we just did an oil change on it. It is nice and dry. We'll move to the front up here. There's our oil filter, and it has a nice little spillway for the oil to come out, which is nice. And we can see our radiators right here through this little hole, and there's nothing leaking or coming out of that, so it's nice and dry. These tires have a date code for 2016. They're probably reaching the end of their life. They probably have a little bit life left on them. We'll let the customer know that it might be getting time for tires soon. So all in all, this is a very nice truck. It is in very good shape. I would definitely recommend one of these if you're in the market. And no, it doesn't have the Nissan CVT transmission. It's just a standard automatic like you would think of any other automatic car. The CVTs that Nissan have are very bad, especially if they're not maintained. But that's not a worry on this one. Everything's actually done on this. We'll get the customer called and tell them they can pick up their truck. But all in all, I can tell the customer's been taking care of it, and what we did today here, the service we did on it, furthers that along. It's being maintained very well. This would be a very good vehicle if you're not looking to drive a big giant truck, but yet you want to haul a family. You have 4 doors. You can haul a swing set that's still unassembled in the box back here. And it gets decent mileage. It's not a gas hog, so it actually would be a good family truck. It could haul your family around pretty nicely. So if you're curious what kind of tools we use to do the services on this Nissan, check my Amazon affiliates link in the description below. We get a small cut and we really appreciate it. And make sure to hit the subscribe button because there is so many more cool videos to come. Thanks for watching.